Welcome to Pull My Focus Adventures in the world of digital filmmaking. Sometimes what appears to be a simple task, it's not too simple in Premiere. I've come across this a bunch of times and I want to help you guys out. How do you make a border in Premiere? So we're going to get through this as fast as possible because I know you came here, you probably searched border, you probably says, let me know how it's done. I'll give you 3 different ways of doing it. So the first way, let's jump right into it. The first way is the tried and true grid command. Okay, so we have a picture of Audrey, she's sitting in the park, and we have this lovely border around. How did I do this? So you'll go to a lot of videos, and what I'm trying to do today is show you how to do these borders without needing to start nesting things and doing crazy kind of, pre-comps, which is basically nesting in Premiere. Let's keep that stuff out of this. Let's do quick and dirty. We're doing quick and dirty, 3 different methods, quick and dirty. The grid method. Okay, so I'm gonna actually delete the grid off of this. And just, here's our image, here's our footage. Okay, so to use the grid method, once again, it's quick and dirty. To use the grid method, you have to know the dimensions of your image or video, and you pretty much have to leave it unaltered. And I'll show you why. So the dimension of this is, if you don't know what it is, you can right click on it and say reveal in project. And once it pops up right down here, you can see down here, okay? Reveal in project, I'm gonna scroll across until I see the dimensions, and they are 1920 by 1080. Cool, all right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go to my effects bin, and we're gonna look for grid, G-R-I-D, and you'll see a ton of YouTube videos on how to do this. Now, currently, grid has been moved to the obsolete bin. Don't worry, it'll still be there, but that just means it's not supported anymore, or it may not have, support moving forward, but I'll show you a couple other methods in case grid is gone. We're gonna apply grid, and now look, wow, well that's helpful. Not really, we have a grid, great. First thing you wanna do is you wanna set the blending mode. It comes default as it's none to normal. Boom, now we see a grid over our image. Now the concept behind using a grid is to make the size of one grid the same size as your video or image. Okay, so what's the size of our video or image? It's 1920 by 1080. So here's what we gotta do. First, we're gonna set the anchor point. And notice, if I click on grid here, the anchor point highlights right here. And you can do some funky stuff with the grid like that, right? See that? Woo. But the anchor point right now is on the center. It's on the center of the image. We don't want that. We want to put the anchor point up in the top corner. So we're going to say 0 and 0, okay, in anchor. Next, we want to change this option here from corner point, size from corner point to width and height sliders. Great. Now, we got a lot of grid back. That's because the default width and height of a grid is now 32 by 24. We're gonna say, no, it's gotta be 1920 by 1080. Boom. We end up with a 1920 by 1080 grid. One of the cells is 1920 by 1080. And now what we can do is we can go into, where is it? We have the border size right here set to 5, and I can, if you click on a box that has numbers, you can actually scroll back and forth using the mouse. As long as you hold the mouse button down, you can do this. So this allows me to make a thicker border, right? And then I can change the color of the border. I can use my little drop tool and I can make the color of the border the same as her, I don't know, shirt right here. Boom. And there we go. We now have a grid connected to this image, and if I come in position and size, it lives along with it, and I can position and size. Now, this is terrific. You can get a little more involved with the grid also. There's a lot of videos on how to make the grid animated and all that other stuff. But the limitation here is that it has to be the same size as the image/video. And if you start to crop or you start to do a little more fancy stuff, it's gonna get difficult. Also, you can't really render rounded corners on this grid. So let's go to the next. So you can do some of this stuff with a grid but it starts to get deep in the weeds of like trouble and math, and we don't have time for that. So the next method, if this helped, move along, we'll see you later. There's your border, go for it. But what if you want to do something like a phone conversation? Like this. Okay, we have two images, one on the left, one on the right, and they're talking to each other. And I kind of animated it in. Well, in this case, for me personally, I don't need an entire grid. I don't need to go through the whole grid concept to get one line. Now, you may be thinking, oh, well, you can use the Essential Graphics panel and draw a thin rectangle and put it right in the middle. But here's what I want to do. This is for me. If this doesn't work for you, it's fine. But works for me is I want to make that solid line a part of one of these elements, okay? And the part of the element that I want to make it is the one that I'm animating in. See how this animates in? And we're going to clean this up also. So let's turn this dude off. We're going to just hide that layer. And let's work with a transparency grid, because right now I have a black border, and Premiere will render black if you don't have anything under it. If you come over to your wrench tool right here, right under your program monitor, you can turn on transparency grid right here. Boom. Now it's like we're in After Effects, okay? And let's get rid of what I use currently, and it's no surprise what we did. Here, let's start from scratch, actually. Completely from scratch. I'm gonna reset all my parameters. Okay, all my parameters are, no, we're back with Audrey sitting in the chair. Great. First things first, I'm gonna grab my crop tool. And I use crop so much that crop actually appears in my favorites. I have a folder here for favorite effects, and I'm gonna take crop and drag it to the window. Now, when I highlight crop over here, when I highlight it, that will show me my crop anchors here that I can start to crop the image. So I'm gonna pull this over and I'll put it about here. And I'm also going to slide my position over, so Audrey's gonna sit over here in the corner. We'll figure out the rest later. Okay, next thing you wanna do is, and this is where grid gets tough to use in this case, because if I used a grid now, oh, it gets so weird I don't even want to tell you. It gets so weird I don't even want to talk about it. I'm just going to use a drop shadow. That's it. Let's throw a drop shadow on. Oh, man, a drop shadow is not going to work because it's opaque and all that stuff. No, it'll work. Watch this. We're going to drop the drop shadow on. Now, remember, the order matters. So from the top down, it will render to the screen. The first thing is always going to be motion, opacity, and time remapping, because every element, every asset's going to be born with that, right? You can't even put things above that. If I take drop shadow and try and slide it above motion, it's not going to work. But if I take it, I can slide it above crop. But this matters. The fact that the crop happens first matters. So I'm going to put drop shadow last in the line, because first we want to crop the image, then we want to drop shadow the cropped final image. So we're going to take that drop shadow, we put it on the effect. Well, nothing happened. What happened? Well, I don't see anything yet. Let's make this a little bigger. Don't worry. The next thing we're going to do, it's going to make this a little bigger too. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the direction. Let's take a look at direction. So direction, if I pop this open too, notice it has this little arrow and it says which direction is it. So as I move it around, you can see the drop shadow show up, okay? To make this better, we're gonna change the distance. I'm gonna make it something stupid like 50. Boom, now you see there's a drop shadow that's rendering right on the left of the image, okay? The left of the image is 270 degrees. 270 degrees, because we're talking about 0, as far as you're concerned, 0, 90, 180, 270. And I'm gonna work with those four to deal with the four sides of the square, okay? So 270 is good. Let's take the opacity and crank it to 100. Boom, that's a solid line, great. Wanna change the color? Boom, let's change the color to, I don't know, blue. Change the color of the drop shadow. Boom, you got a blue border. Want to change the thickness of chin, then dial down the distance. Just dial down the distance. Boom. So in this case, we're doing a phone call. So I'm going to turn that back to black. Or we're doing the old optical bench style phone conversations. And that's it. And this comes in great. Drop shadows work really well when you know what the composition of your shot's going to be, and you only need one or two sides. Hell, if you want, just go for it and put a drop shadow. You can duplicate the drop shadow and make it point the other way, and do all 4 sides like that. The thing that works for me in this instance is that drop shadow lives with the image now. So if I take this image and I move it around, you can see I didn't do the other side. If I move it around, beautiful. The drop shadow comes with me. Now, obviously, if you scale up and down, you may have to change the distance, the direction. I'm sorry, the distance parameter to make it thicker and thinner. But this works for me in a pinch. It's really fast. It's really useful. So there we go. So now we'll finish this effect. I'm gonna bring this over. We're gonna bring in our dude again. You know, the person she's talking to on the phone. And let's have her here, and we can fix his position too. So we're gonna slide him over, and we're gonna put him right there. And now let's move him over a little bit more. Put him right there. Boom. Let me set this to full so I can see the full frame, and then move him over. There we go. And now she can animate in, right? So let's turn off the transparency grid so we can see what it'll actually render. Transparency grid is gone. And yeah, I'm gonna fix this a little more so that line, as an editor, you can tell when things don't feel right. There we go, that feels right. Now we have a nice little, hi there, and here's your person talking to you. The third method is, what if you don't have a straight line? Uh-oh. Right? So grid works well with just standard images at their native resolution. 1, 2, 3, 4, add a grid, do what I told you, that's great. Shadow works well if you make it 100% opaque and you render it on each side. You can add 3 more drop shadows to the Outtro clip and have all 4 sides. But if you have a situation, how do you do this? What's going on here? Well, first of all, we have a shape that has no straight sides. And we've superimposed it on the image. And now this is a really cool stylistic kind of way of showing a conversation. Let's talk about how this works. First of all, I'm going to eliminate every single thing on here to show you guys just how I did it. Okay, and we're gonna turn this dude off. We're just making his layer not visible. And then we're gonna reset. This will use what's called a radial shadow. First things first, I want to crop it. I want to make sure that what I want is what I get. Now, you could say, hey, Mano, why don't you use an opacity? Okay? But remember, when you use an opacity, all it does is it shows the thing inside or outside, whether you define, and it renders black around it. I don't want black rendered around it because I want the dude to be underneath. So we're not going to do an opacity mask. We will do, and like I said, the crop is always in my favorites toolbox. I always use a crop. So we're gonna add a crop to this image. And now we're gonna make it a circle because we wanna make it a light circle. So I clicked on the circle tool that's over here. You see you have square and circle at your disposal. You also have this freeform free pen Bezier. And I'm going to, let's make this a little bigger. So I'm gonna grab one of these handles and stretch it out so it looks like a nice circle. By the way, feel free to eyeball things. Unless your editor or your producer or whatever wants you to be pixel perfect and use math, eyeball it. I'm gonna eyeball this to where it feels good. So this feels good to me right there. That feels like a nice circle around Outro's head. Actually, let's come a little lower. That feels good. Okay. Well, wait, Mano, you put a crop on it and it didn't crop. Well, no, it didn't. Because I didn't tell it to crop yet. I just told it what area in the scene to crop. I still have to crop. And I see a lot of editors get into this trouble. They drop a crop mask and they go, nothing happened. Well, you still have to mask it. You still have to crop it. Okay, so if I click on the crop again, I can see these handles. I keep saying handles. And if I do this, I wipe across. Now it's cropped. This is not cropped. This is cropped. So don't forget to actually do a crop. You can do it from the bottom. You can do it from. I can do it from the top, as long as you complete the crop. So I'm just gonna pull this off the left. It's the opposite, right? Boom. Our inverse is right here. Inverted. Boom. We've inverted it. Beautiful. It's soft. I want it to be hard. I want it to be a sharp edge. We're gonna take that default feather of 10 off, which gives us a hard edge. Now here's the tricky part. Now check this out. Once again, I'm gonna go into my transparency grid. If I'm going too fast, please watch this back because I don't want to waste your time. I want to show you these methods, all right? Turn on the transparency grid. Once again, we can play with this. And you can see already I forgot to crop the rest of this out. So let's just take the rest of this out. Okay, it's fully cropped, all right? We're gonna use a radial shadow. So we're gonna go into the effects bin and type radial. And once again, it's one of those obsolete effects. It will probably still be in your version of Premiere. It may just have moved somewhere. It just means they're not gonna kind of update it anymore. Let's drag that radial shadow to here. Now, with radial shadow, you can see I still have a shadow. And remember, order matters, so it goes below the crop. The things we want to mess around with radial shadow is just like with shadow, right? We're going to take the opacity, turn it to 100, solid. We can take the color, we can change the color if we want to something fun. Boom, there's a color. Now, the trick with it is the light source. The light source is what we want to deal with. We want to deal with light source. Oh, one other thing, make sure you click resize layer. Sometimes, as a safety, click resize layer because that'll let you change the size of the shadowed layer. This light source, as you can see, the anchor point is here. Okay, I can either change these numbers. I can slide this around. See how it's sliding around, moving the anchor point? Or what I find easy is just to grab the anchor point and now put that right about in the middle of the image that I'm going for, the circular image that I'm going for. And there you have it. You have your circular border. Once again, you can change the projection distance to change the thickness up to a certain point, but I'm gonna go about here. Okay, we turn on our dude. Boom, there he is. And now we can move. If I go up to motion, I can drag Audrey over to where her spot is. And we have completed the effect. Hope that's helpful to you guys. 3 different ways to create borders using mostly shadows and crops. And there was the grid command that also is in there. Because when you look for that border effect in Premiere, well, it's not there. But these are some ways to let you creatively create borders. Thanks a lot for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.